This week's parsha, Parshas Vayishlach, wanted to focus on the area of Yaakov meeting up with Eisav. Specific area that caught my attention is the part where Yaakov bows down to Eisav, and the part where Eisav tries to convince him to take back all the gifts that he gave, and Yaakov refuses. A little bit the area that's interesting to me is, on the one hand, we know that there's a tremendous isser to flatter wicked people, whether that's to try to curry favor with them, to show them that we condone their behavior, that Chazal speak very severely about flattering wicked people. And on the same time, Chazal will say that Yaakov's method of dealing with Eisav, which involves a lot of humbling himself before him, and buttering him up in certain ways, would seem to be that this is the proper approach of dealing with Eisav. So, a little bit confused by the area. Don't have so much clarity in why this is not. Couldn't even find svarim that I looked at discussing it of why this doesn't get into that category. But it appears that it's the proper approach. There's a pasuk, Vayistarchu artz sheva pi'omim ad gishto ad achiv, that Yaakov bowed 7 times until he got to Eisav. The Mefarshim quote the pasuk as it says, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. That usually they quote that pasuk differently, but the pasuk literally means that the tzaddik should fall 7 times, should bow 7 times. So the Zohar on this pasuk says, how could he bow to Eisav? Isn't Eisav symbolic of Avodah Zarah? It's like bowing to an Avodah Zarah to bow to Eisav. Of course he can't bow to Eisav. What does it mean? It means that the Shekhinah was in front of him, and he bowed. It says specifically in the pasuk that he bowed 7 times ad gishto ad achiv, until he got to his brother. He was bowing 7 times before he got to his brother. He was really bowing down before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not before Eisav. So Rav Dessler takes a look at the Zohar, and he says, obviously, Eisav took this as bowing to him. And he says, this is what Yaakov was teaching us for the generations, that this is what Hashem wants, is that when the Goyim oppress us, we should be humbling ourselves before them as accepting that this is Hashem's Gezerah. That this is Hashem's Gezerah, that we should be oppressed at times by the Goyim. And this is for the good of Klal Yisrael, because it keeps us separate from the Goyim. It keeps us making Havdalah from them. It keeps us away from them. So in that sense, he says the bowing to Eisav is a bowing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's accepting Hashem's Gezerah, that we need to be humble in this sense before the oppression of the Goyim. And that's why it's a nullifying oneself before Hashem. It's a bowing before Hashem. The Sforno also touches on this idea when it talks about Eisav ran to greet him because he saw all the humility in it. It made him very happy. And Sforno references the Gemara in Tainus. Achi Hashiloni cursed Klal Yisrael that they'll be hit like the reed. The reed gets battered in every direction, but at the end of the day, the reed bounces back up. It contrasts it that Bilam blessed them, they should be like the cedar. Cedar's a very tough tree, but if a wind takes it down, it ain't getting back up. So this idea of the reed, that it's going to get battered around, is the point he's focusing on. He says if the Bar Yonim hadn't fought back in the Bayis Sheni, if they had allowed them to be humble before the Romans, the second Beis Hamikdash wouldn't have been destroyed at that time. As Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai told Vespasian, he says that the Bar Yonim wouldn't let us come and make peace. Otherwise they would have tried. That's what they would have done. They would have tried to make peace, to humble themselves before the Romans. Another interesting area of this idea of the humbling before Eisav is the pasuk says that it says in pasuk Yud, after Eisav says, Yesli Rav, my brother, I have plenty, take back your gifts to me, Yaakov said, no, if I have found favor in your eyes, then please take my minchas. Because I've seen your face as like the face of a god, and I have been appeased. So, interestingly, it doesn't seem like too many people learn this to be referring to it's like seeing you as like seeing Hashem. They either translate it as, the way Unclus translates it as, is like seeing like a dignitary, seeing like somebody very respectable, as sometimes the word Elohim can be referring to judges. And it sounds like Rashi's learning it refers to like the face of the Malach, that he says, seeing your face was like seeing the face of a malach, Eisav, because I saw your malach. So, he just fought with the malach of Eisav. So he says, your face resembles that of a malach. It's such a schus just to see your face. Such a schus to see the way that Onkelos translates it, such an eminent face. So, the two different pshatim, they say, are based on two different pshatim in the Gemara in Sota, Mem Aleph Amud Beis. So, the Gemara says, Reish Lakish says it's mutter to flatter the wicked in this world. How do we know? He says, because that's what Yaakov says to Eisav, Kiros Panei Elohim, seeing your face is like seeing the face of such an important person. It's so beautiful just to see your face. That's enough of a schus for me. I'd love to give you gifts. Says he's arguing with Rabbi Levi. Rabbi Levi says, what's Yaakov saying to Eisav? A person invites his friends. I'll give you a mashal. Somebody invites his friend, and who knows wants to kill him. So he says, this food that you made is so good, it's like the food that I tasted at the king's house. So the guy thinks, he says, this guy knows the king. Maybe I'd better not kill him. He says, that's what Eisav is, that's what Yaakov is doing here. He's saying, your face is just like that malach of yours that I met with. So, in a sense, he's trying to scare him a little bit. I just fought your malach, and I was successful. And your malach was not able to beat me. You also will not be able to beat me. So, on the one hand, he's saying something which on the surface sounds very much like he's praising him. But on the other hand, according to this second pshat, it has this undertone of don't mess. And that seems to be how Rashi and the Chumash is translating the pasuk, Kuros es Panei Elohim, that he's saying it's kedai for you to accept my gifts, because seeing your face is like seeing the face of a malach. It's just such an honor for me to honor you. And he's hinting to him, that I saw your malach. Why is he doing that? To cause him to be afraid. He says, I'm not going to be able to beat him. He was able to fight my malach, and my malach couldn't overcome him. So it's interesting to me. You see, the Gemara is taking the Rashi is taking this position of the Gemara that it's also to flatter him, and at the same time, there's this tremendous amount of humility before him. There's this humbling himself before him. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky actually explores the contradictory aspect of this Rashi. On the one hand, he's saying something so buttering him up and flattering him, and on the other hand, he's also has an undertone of a threat. Like, which one is it? So he speaks about this. He talks about, we have coming up in Parshas Vayigash that Yehuda says to Yosef, Ki kamocha kaparo, which Rashi says on the one hand he means, you're as respectable and wonderful as Paro. On the other hand means that I would destroy you just like I would destroy Paro. So which one is it? So Rav Yaakov says that, Rav Yaakov approaches it, that we have this idea of Pshat, Remez, Drush, and Sod, and they're all Divrei Elokim Chayim. And so I think he's saying over here the same idea, that they're both true. That on the one hand, he's saying this idea which on the surface has this implication of you're so respectable, but underneath it also has this undertone of this secondary message, and it's not a contradiction. He could be saying words that have two layers of meaning, and the idea is that Eisav is supposed to pick up on both levels of meaning, the same way that Yehuda does to Yosef in a few parshios from now. So we have this idea of that we're supposed to learn from Yaakov Avinu how to deal with Eisav, this humbling ourselves before the oppression of the Goyim, and that being the will of Hashem, and this idea that we have of not flattering the wicked, and that Yaakov in fact does in a nice way show Eisav that he is not afraid of him, as much as he's humbling him, that he says that you won't be able to beat me, and he gives this veiled warning and threat, if you will, to Eisav, and that he's able to do both simultaneously. He's able to be humble before him and keep his faith in Hashem strong, and even have a certain level of toughness with Eisav. May Hashem help us in our own journeys as we deal with the outside world that we live in and the challenges that it's bringing in our direction. May Hashem help us deal with these things properly and go in the proper path. Have a wonderful Shabbos.